Welcome everyone to our session today. We're going to be talking about a lot of different applications today. We're going to be talking about sharing those applications as well. So we're going to be covering a little bit on Microsoft Forms, Microsoft Lists, Microsoft SharePoint, and Power Automate. Well, and Microsoft Teams and Outlook. We'll be talking a little bit about each of those. So we're talking about a lot of different things today, but our main focus is how everyday business processes work. Like if you have requests, you have approvals, you need to collect data, how these features can really be streamlined by using these Microsoft 365 tools that I just mentioned. So this is more about practical automation, not the complex development. We won't be diving into very deeply into Power Automate, but we will be using Power Automate. So this is going to be things that are no code, designed for any business user. We don't have to be an expert in specific areas. So first, talking about streamlining requests, approvals, and data collection with these Microsoft tools. I know that many organizations still rely on email. We have spreadsheets for requests and approvals, which really lead to delays and confusion. We don't know for sure if something really was approved and the process it went through. So with our 365 apps that are built into your Microsoft account, like Forms, SharePoint Lists, and approvals, that really brings all these processes to work together. They reduce manual efforts and really improve the visibility side of tracking the results and being able to know if they were approved or not, and making it super easy for end users to do. Now, we'll walk through multiple examples of each of these. But what are some key benefits? Accountability, visibility, and efficiencies in workflows? Well, when workflows are structured, everyone knows what's happening and who's responsible. Automation really helps ensure that the requests don't get lost in the inboxes or didn't get sent for whatever reason. So with centralized tracking, managers and team members really have a quick, easy way to see the status, the outcome, and what the next steps might be that we need to make sure are happening. So simplifying automation, no code solutions is what we want. We don't want to have things difficult for people to do. So the goal is to simplify, standardize these processes, not redesign systems and replace existing tools. I see a lot of people use third-party applications because they don't realize that these processes are built into 365 and they're easy to use, as you will of course see today. So a common misconception is that automation is complex, technical. It is not really that way. Many useful automations are simple. They require little knowledge. They're familiar because they're Microsoft. So when we go into Forms, we go into Lists, we're going to see consistency. It helps then for us to have an easier way to be able to develop these, to create these. It helps reduce errors. And in the long run, it's going to save so much time. And we don't have to customize anything. We don't have to be a developer to do things. So these tools are really designed to fit within existing workflows. You don't need to automate everything all at once. Starting small really allows your team to adopt the automation more comfortably, and we can scale it over time. What we talk about using today is just your starting point. I think after you kind of go through our examples today, people's eyes start to open and you start to think about other ways that you could be doing similar things. Okay. So when it comes to the role of SharePoint, Microsoft Forms in our work automation, each of these tools does have a specific role. The Forms collect the information, the SharePoint lists store it and track it, and approvals ensure the decisions are being captured. So understanding these roles makes automation easier to design and easier to maintain. So first off, Microsoft Forms is the front door to many workflows. It provides a simple way for users to submit a form, submit information. They fill out the form and submit it, and it ensures required details are also collected up front. Because as you're going to see as I show you how to create a form real quick, we can have things be required and they can't go any further without them being filled in. So this is going to help reduce with follow-up emails or really those incomplete requests where we're not gathering the right details that we really needed. So what's going to happen is once information is collected, it needs a home. So where is it going to go? Well, it can go to different places. It can go to a database, like an Access SQL database, that kind of a thing. It can go to Excel spreadsheets. We can have it automatically being compiled in Excel. But what we're going to discuss today is really bringing it into a SharePoint list where we can store all the submissions, we can track the status, we can provide visibility over time, and lists make it easy for teams and managers to be able to monitor the progress of what's going on. Has everything been completed, and is there anything outstanding? And it can be customized any way we need it to be. So this is the core pattern we'll keep coming back to. The form collects the request, the list tracks it, approvals handle decision making, and status updates keep everybody informed. This replaces that email process with a clear, repeatable workflow. And I can't say enough about replacing the email process. I have been on the other end of that email process for many years. I used to even do Scantron back in the day where people would fill out a paper form with a number 2 pencil. I went through Scantron training out in California and, learned how to write surveys and all of that. I am so glad I don't have to do that anymore. The days of paper tracking it was a nightmare. I'll just have to say it was a nightmare. What we have today is super easy. So using Microsoft Forms for structured data collection and approvals, they're ideal for this situation. And especially if they require review or some type of approval. They standardize how the data is entered. They work well with the starting point for automating processes, gives the end user quick, easy access to however we want them to get to the form to even fill it out. So lots of different options are going to end up being available. So forms themselves are an app that is part of your 365 suite. They are easy to create and really don't require any technical skills. They support different question types, and they integrate with your other Microsoft tools. This makes it a really strong choice for businesses for requests and intake. So super easy to set up, but you want to think about doing a little planning ahead. So depending on the type of form you may want, which from this list, you could see here's some examples of what departments and what type of forms they might be using if they need an approval-based form. So it could be based on HR, where we want a time off request, we want training request, equipment request, we want employee change information to be filled out, like your emergency contact details. Or in finance, covering expenses. We have budget increases, we have vendor payments, capital expenditures, or if you happen to be in operations or an IT form, and we want to have, if somebody requests, say, new laptop, they require new software, project approval options. Just think of all the things that a business has that we could benefit from forms, whether they're being used internally or externally. And then management and general business forms. Management forms include your policies, your contracts, your travel approval, your event or marketing content approvals, so many different options we can be using. So when it comes to forms working well for approvals. In Microsoft 365, it's a natural alignment for approvals because they really capture the requests that require that decision, and they provide the visibility, they create an audit trail, and they reduce the reliance on manual follow-up. And that's what we want for saying the word automation. We don't want the word manual to be a part of that. So creating and configuring a Microsoft form. We're going to walk through how to build a Microsoft form. The process is pretty straightforward and really focuses on clarity, what do you want for required fields, and having that consistent data collection. We want to be able to collect the data. So starting by creating a new form, you're going to name it, you're going to add in your questions, you're going to choose whether they're required fields, you're going to be able to preview the form before you share it. And this really helps to ensure that the form works well on both desktop and mobile, because we can actually preview it on both, and you can always test it with other people as well. So we're going to see how we can actually do a clear questions that can lead to the better responses, use choice questions or drop downs to really standardize things so that it will help the text, so that we reduce the data entry, I really should say. It will help with reducing confusion and really improve the data we are collecting, because we can configure things. So let's actually take a look at where and how a list can be created. So this is where the answer is going to give you multiple choices. Where do you want the form to be used? Do you want the form to be inside Microsoft Teams? If you do, you could create a form right in Microsoft Teams. I could come to a team, I could go to a channel, and on the tabs of that channel, we can go to the plus sign for adding, we can choose apps, and from there we could choose a form. You would see all, you could navigate to the forms, and you could be adding a form in. So here's the icon for forms, just so you know. I'm not going to do that right now, but just so you know, that is an option. What's going to happen if you do it this way is that form is available for everybody that is a part of this team, okay? But where it's being stored, it could be used in other locations, because a form could actually be used through SharePoint, and it could be created in SharePoint, or it could be created in the SharePoint app. If I go to a SharePoint site, just to give you an idea of how we could do this, if I'm in a SharePoint site, I could go to the new drop-down and choose list form. Now we're going to talk about the difference between a list form and a Microsoft form, because they're actually two different applications. Right now we're talking about Microsoft Forms. We'll get to list forms in a minute because there's a difference. But what I want to do is, besides going to this drop down and creating a list or a list form, I'm going to scroll down. I have two other options I wanted to show you, and I just did a web part. So I'm the editor. I'm the owner of this SharePoint site. So I added a web part. I added a quick web part, a quick links web part, where I have a link to a form where we could just click on the link. I can give it an icon, I could give it verbiage, whatever. Or I could have the whole form be here available where everybody can see it right away. They can even fill the form out, and at the bottom of the questions, click submit. So we could actually visually see it, or the icon that I had up above in these quick links is related to it opening in a new window. I like it opening in a new window better, but it kind of depends. I wanted you to see both options. Now, we will talk about how to add that if you decide you wanted to do that. I also have step-by-step instructions on everything I'm talking about in your handouts with tons of examples, okay? Now, another way to create a form, a Microsoft form, by the way, I could do it as a web part. I could go directly to edit this page or the SharePoint site, and I could add a form as a web part and create a brand new form. Just so you know, I could do that. But also, I could go to my apps. So if I go to my Microsoft apps, I could just click Forms, and from here, I'm going to see every form that I have available to me. Every form I have available to me. Pretty awesome that we have that option. So what you're going to see when you come in here is at the top, you could create a new form, a new quiz, or do a quick import. Down below, you're going to see existing forms. But what I'm going to do right now is walk you through how you could actually create a brand new form. Because if this is the route you end up going, this is an option. This is an option for you to create a form based on whatever it is that you need to capture. And if you need each record in the form to actually be approved or etc., you need to have it checked off on a list or something. You have to send it for approval. I'll show you how that can be done. So just to give you an idea, what I'm going to do is click New Form. Now, I'm not going to do a lot in this form, just so you're aware. By the way, my favorite thing to do is to describe the form. So in your handout, I also gave you a copy paste of what you could do to create a form. Now, the form that I'm going to be creating and kind of walking you through today, based on those examples that we talked about earlier, is an expense form. So I took a trip and I need to fill out an expense report to send in for approval so that I can get reimbursed. It's going to be a simple example of something like that. Now, we're going to keep it pretty simple, just giving you some ideas of how you could do this yourselves. So I could come in and describe everything that I want that form to do. So like I said, I did have that in your handouts, and I'm just going to do a little copy paste. Otherwise, I could manually create a form by adding in all the questions that I want, choosing the type of question. So do I want it to be text? Do I want it to be a date? Do I want it to be a money, a currency? Do I want it to be a choice where it could be check one or check multiples? We can do any of those in a form, and it is super easy to do. But anyway, or you could describe your form that you want Copilot to create. So I put in the purpose of this form is to collect expense details that are being stored in a SharePoint list and send for manager approval, blah, blah, blah. I'm just going to show you how I could type that detail in. So it's kind of like my plan. This is everything that I want in the form. I can click send, and Copilot can analyze my results of what I typed in, and it can automatically create the form. Or I could have created the form myself by just going to, and I'm going to say keep it at the bottom. I could have just gone in and said add a field, or add a new question, I should say. You can see, I just scrolled down to the bottom. I'll go through this for you better here in a second. But just so you could see down at the bottom, this is how you add questions to your form. This would be at the top if I had nothing, if I didn't go through Copilot. I would just click add a new question. Then I'm going to choose the type of question I want. It's even got Likert scales. We could do rankings. We can have it be a upload a file. So just so you could see, you've got all these different options. So if I want it to be a text, then I come in and I just type in what my question is. So what is your department manager? Oops, I'm going to type this correctly. What is your department manager? Just so you could see, or I should say, who is your department manager? Sorry. So just so you could see how you could create this text field. Now, if you want it to be longer text, you could slide this button over. If you want it to be required, it's already being required right now, but if you don't want it to be required, turn the button off. You have different options here where if you want to move it up and down within the list of questions, you can also click and drag things, but also you could delete it. So if I decide I don't want it, I click this delete and it's automatically gone. Let me show you another question type that you could build. and then I'll show you the ones that are already built. But if I go into add new question again, maybe I want it to be a date. So what date do I need? What if it's, say, start date? I put in the name of it, and I can make it required or not, and that's all I have to do. So when somebody goes to fill this out, they're going to get a date icon. They can pick from a calendar, so it gives them the pop-up calendar for them to choose from. Pretty easy, pretty simple. But I'm just going to delete that because I'm not going to keep adding more questions to this. I just want to show you some of these options. Let me show you a choice because that's a popular one. And this helps with data entry errors. So I'm going to go to add question. I'm going to keep it on choice. And then I type in what the question is, and then I'm going to give them what their options are. So maybe I'm going to do, what department are you in? Oops, let me type that correctly. And if I want to give them different options to choose from, I don't want them to, if we wanted to say human resources, I don't want it to say HR. I'm going to do options. I don't want them to free flow type. They're going to put it in differently. And then when it comes to analyzing the results of the form, we don't want to have it be difficult. So we need consistency. So if I'm going to have IT, and then I can add options to this. If it only gives you 2 or 3 choices, you can continue to add. What do you want them to be able to choose from? So if they're in sales, marketing, whatever departments you want to be adding in. If they're in operations, that type of thing. I'm not going to add any more. I wanted you to see how this works. Well, when it comes to this expense submit form, this is probably a question that I want. If I scroll back up, it already gave us, here's a department. So it did include a department with these because that was in my Copilot chat that I did to have it create this. I told it I wanted to have the second question be department with these options. So if I told it, it creates it. Otherwise, I can manually do it. So which one do I want to keep? Well, I don't want the same question twice, so I'm going to just come down to the bottom and delete mine. So anyway, you could create your form, whether you create it through Copilot or you manually create it. And of course, there's more to the whole process of creating these forms. You could check back on some of the recordings from Smart Dolphins because we have done a forms class in the past, but that's where I'm going to stop with how the form gets created. Now, I'll come back to this form in just a minute. I have this form automatically created. It's saved and it's called expense submission form. I'll come back and talk a little bit more about that. I want to actually talk a little bit about Microsoft Lists next. So when it comes to SharePoint lists, this is where that data can live. So the forms results can go into a Microsoft list. They allow multi-users, it supports permission levels, and it integrates easy with automation. In Access databases, SQL databases, you're going to need more of a programmer to do it. If you're using Excel, that's not easy to do. I've tried it. It does not work very well. A list is 100% my go-to. Lists act as our tracking device and our visual layer of the workflow information that we're using. So Microsoft Lists store that data and support collaboration for us. They're used for tracking requests, approvals, assets, tasks, and they make them ideal for a workflow automation because it's built in. We don't have to know how to use Power Automate. I'll show you what I mean in a second. So when it comes to creating a list, you could create a regular Microsoft list like we did in a previous session, which was actually our last session last week, where we could develop these columns and rows. Let me show you an example of what a list, an existing list, looks like, because we're not going to use it. We're going to go a different direction with this, but let me show you what I mean by a regular list. So I already have my app open for lists. I'm just going to open a previous list that I had. It was called Asset Equipment Tracker, where I could create a list that matches perfectly with my form questions. where I can have each column in my list match the form that I'm going to have everybody fill out. So I wouldn't, not my highly recommended. I could create a separate form, then come in and create a separate list. Then I'd have to actually go into Power Automate and tell the Power Automate to create a workflow that says when a form comes in, I want it to automatically go into this list. Yes, that's a longer way around than what we're going to do today. We're going to automate this a little bit easier, but we'll talk about both scenarios. But a list is going to give you columns and rows, and each column can be programmed differently. Like this condition column, that could actually be a column of drop-down choices. So instead of having just free flow typing, a list can also be a drop-down, just like we do in a form. So they have a lot of similarities. We can have date fields, we can have text related fields, we can have currency fields, we can have multi-choice, those same exact things that we get in a form, we can have in a list. Or we could do a list form, which I'll get to in just a minute. So I'm just going to go back to lists again, because we're going to talk about how to create a new list. But before we do the creation of a new list, planning for status, approvals, and handling default columns is something I want to mention. So lists are going to include these columns that we could be putting in the details of what we want to populate coming from our form. They're usually updated automatically by the workflow then, where once they fill out the form, the results of it automatically goes into the mapped field. So this is where forms, I should say, when someone fills in a form, this is where it getting populated into a SharePoint list can fall short a little bit, is because sometimes a list form is going to be a better option than a regular Microsoft form. Now we'll get to list forms in a second, but this is an example of what an expense reimbursement request could look like. So what this list or this form is going to do then is I would have to have apples to apples on first and last name, attachments, department, expense date, categories, etc. I would have to match that, creating in the list that I want to populate it from the form, so that each column matches exactly from the form to the list. So that's an option that you have, but a better choice is to use what is referred to as a list form. So instead of creating just a regular list, we have the ability of creating what is called a list form. A list form is going to be an actual form where they will see one record at a time by default. We can then take the link for it or any form and put it into SharePoint so that people have easy access to get to it. It could be shared in Microsoft Teams. It could be shared via email. Any form can, and so can a list form. So when it comes to a list form versus a Microsoft form, we use list forms if it's for internal processes, and forms for more broader or even working with external audiences. Choosing the right tool really does make a difference to give things to you easier to use. So list forms, the entries that people make in the form are going to automatically go into the list. We don't have to develop a form and create a list. We create it all at one time, and that's going to be recommended. A Microsoft form can be used with external people. So if you're going to have a form that's being used externally, you might need to go that route. They're both easy to create. They both can collect data from outside of SharePoint, outside of Microsoft Teams. They both have the capability of doing that technically, but we'd have to program it to do it. We'd have to have Power Automate workflows to actually do that, okay? So let's take a look at a list for doing all of this, a list form. So what a list form is going to end up looking like for you is let me get my mouse back here. I'm going to go to, so I opened up the app for lists, Microsoft Lists. I'm going to go to create new. Now I could create just a regular list, but I'm not going to. I'm going to show you a short example of how you could create a list form instead. So first you're going to give the form a name, and I'm just going to call it expenses. And I'm going to keep it, just so you know, where it says create in, my list is my OneDrive. It's being stored there, but I can share it with other people from anywhere. But if I wanted to go directly to someplace else, a team, I wanted to go to a SharePoint site, I can click this drop down and choose where I want it to go. So if I want this to be available in the accounting department, I could choose my SharePoint site, my Microsoft Teams SharePoint site, accounting department. And I could show this list in the site navigation as well. So when I go to the SharePoint site, it could be on the left-hand side automatically. If I click create, just to walk you through how this could work, oops, I already had one of those. I'll just put company ABC, oops, ABC, just so I have a different name. I got to go out and delete some of those old ones that I've used in other classes. So basically, you're going to have the ability of creating the form. So we would come in and we would put in the title of it. We could add in a logo, which you can do in a form as well. So I'll just add one in quick so you could see. We could describe what the form is about, expenses for employees. But then we need to put in the details of what the fields are going to be. So we have to go in and we add in each field. So if this is where the employee name is going to go, oops, sorry, let me get back in there. Employee name, by default, all Microsoft lists have a title column, but that can be changed and used for something else. We could put in a description, like if we wanted it to be first and last names, just so you know. Then I go to add new column. I choose the type of column I want to add. So if I want it to be a choice column, I want to know what their department is. And then they can choose. So I'm going to go into this choice 1 and I'm going to put in HR. I'm going to go to choice 2, put in IT. Oops, IT. I would continue to add all those in. Then I go in and add a new field. I add a new field. I add a new field, blah, blah, blah. I'm going to keep doing that. Just like when I created the regular form, you're doing almost identical. Well, it is identical. The fields have to match. But if you want to do it just here in the list form, you're doing it once instead of having a separate. So I'm going to close this. I'm going to say I'm done. I'm going to close it. Now this form, I can go to the preview at the top right and preview what it's going to look like. So this is what it's going to look like right now. I'm not going to keep that open. I'm going to go ahead and close that. But what does that other form look like? Let me go back to that expense form. So this was Microsoft Forms where I created the form. And at the top, if I go to preview, I can preview what it's going to look like. You always want to preview before you let people submit. I have a computer versus mobile view at the top right. But both of them also have settings where they can both be shared. I have step-by-step instructions in your handout to do all of that. So what do I want to capture? Under these settings, who can fill out this form? We can say anybody from your company can fill it out. We're going to record their name. There can only be one response per person. You just pick and choose which features you want. Response receipts, allow recipient to respond after submission. Get an email notification, and who is supposed to get the email notification when a response comes in. You could do all of that. So we have different ways of being able to go in and say, I want to share this with others. Here's the settings that I'm going to have, etc. Now, once people start filling out the form, where are they going to fill it out from? Well, we could put it as a hyperlink in a Teams channel. We could have it be a hyperlink in a post or a chat. It can be sent via email. It can be sent to a SharePoint site. like I showed you earlier, where they can click on an icon or just fill out the form itself right there. There's a lot of different ways that we can share the form with others, regardless of it, if it's a list form or if it's this form coming from Microsoft Forms. Up at the top, you can see where it has collect responses. This is where I can go in and I can say, I want to copy a link for this form. So if I come in and I say copy link for this form, or I could start sending an email, I can even post it to a team. This is what the email would look like. I could also copy the code to embed it, which sometimes I do in a form, for a form in SharePoint and things like that. But either way, both a SharePoint list form or this Microsoft form, both can be shared with these same choices, just so you know. Now, what's going to happen once people start filling these forms out? Well, if they fill them out in a regular form like this, you can come in and you can actually click View Responses. You can see a list of every response that you have. Now, let me actually show you an existing list that has responses. I'll just show you. I'm going to view responses. So this is what it's going to look like when you view the responses that have come in. I also am analyzing this data in an Excel spreadsheet. So I have it being sent to Excel. I'm not having it be sent to Microsoft Lists or anything, but I do have this one going to Microsoft Excel, just so you're aware of how this is going to end up looking. So that's an option for you to do. But let me actually go back to this list. So here's that list that I just created. If I want to go back into it, I most certainly could, but I'm going to go into one that I've already created for an expense reimbursement. So here's a form, or I should say a list form, that I created by doing that new list form. These are the fields that I had it include. I included the employee name, their department, the manager's name. Manager's name is a people field. So when I created the list, even if I go right now to this list and I go to add column, I can choose what type of column I want. And if I choose person, that is going to look at your global address list. You can add people directly from your contact list so that they can be part of that workflow. So if I wanted to add in somebody for approver, who's the person that's going to be the approver, etc., I could fill that in as a people. Do I want to show their profile picture or not? Just so you know, you could do that. But I did it when I was creating it, because when I create a regular Microsoft form, I can't do a people column where it's going to automatically go out and grab the email address from my global address list and have that be connected. A Microsoft form does not do that. We would have to use Power Automate to tell it to do that. Okay. So instead, I prefer to use a Microsoft list form and that's what this is, because this is the expense report. Now, how do people fill this out? Well, what I did was I actually shared this. So I actually went to sharing. I shared this just like you share anything. So the share icon. I could copy the URL. Otherwise, I could just, copy link. I could fill out an email and send it to people to fill out. But what I did was I actually took the URL. So up at the top, because it's internet based, I copied the URL from the top. What I did then was I went to the SharePoint site that I want this to be available, and I created two different options. I created this one that in the quick parts, and then I did another one where I just embedded the form itself. So they could either fill it out here. This is an example. I wouldn't give them both. I would give them one or another. I like this one where we could have different company forms, where I did an edit. Just to show you how I did this, I did an edit, and then in my web parts on the right-hand side, my tools, I brought over a quick link. So if I just drop this quick link, and then I come in and I can add a link, and I paste what I copied. I paste what I copied from the URL of my Microsoft list form. Now, I'm not really going to do that again because I already have this, but that's how I got this on the right-hand side. So let me delete this part, but that's what I did here. So this reimbursement, expense reimbursement form, that is that link. So if I go back out and republish this after I added my form link, I republish this, someone can come into this list of different company forms. Like if they want to change their W-2s, they want to, submit a time off request, whatever your case might be, you could have them all in these quick links on SharePoint. Then you're going to click on the form, or they will click on the form to open up the form. And this is that SharePoint forms list that I just that I showed you. I created it yesterday, but this is like I was showing you how to create. So I'm going to put in a first name and a last name. So it's going to be Neil Sears. I'm not going to put in an attachment, but I'm going to choose from the drop down my department. I'm going to put in the expense date, and I'm going to say it was on February 28th. Oh, by the way, I could just click on my expense type because I put in a type column, and I'm going to say this was for travel, and an expense description, flight to Seattle. We'll just leave it for now. It'll come up as being misspelled here in a second. I can put in my expense of how much it was. Then I click submit. So it's going to open in a new window for them. If I told it to automatically give them an email back, like I showed you a moment ago in that settings window, I can get an email letting me know that a new one came in. But otherwise, it is the responsibility of whoever wants to maintain that list. They can go out to that list. So let me back up on this a little bit. So let me go back. So if I'm in this list right now, you can't see the one that just was submitted because I didn't refresh my window. I have to refresh to get the new ones to come in. So now you can see the one that I just filled out. Okay, so here's all the detail. Now, I didn't put in a manager's name or email address from there, but let me go into this and add one. I forgot to do that. It was at the bottom. If I go in and I add in a manager's name or email address, I'm going to say that this needs to go to Jolynn, and I can have it automatically send me. So let me add my name in here. So the manager's name and email address, if I put in somebody from my global address list, I can actually set this up for approval. I have the step-by-step instructions all in your handout for everybody. So what I'm showing you right now, if I'm going a little fast and you're not catching all of it, I'm giving you Power Automate instructions that you can copy and paste into. I'll show you Power Automate in a moment, but I'm just going to do this right here in the list because that's how easy it is. So if you do a SharePoint list form, it automatically can be a form that you put wherever, you email it to people, you share it however you want to share it, put it on a SharePoint site, all of those same things, and it's automatically a form. And the results are automatically coming into the list. And it has built-in automation. Let me show you. If I go to this automate, I already have turned on, let me show you on a different list here real quick. Let me go into this one real quick. So let's say that I have this list and I go to automate. If I don't already have it turned on, and I have screenshots and everything in your handout, go to this automate, click configure approvals. Once you slide the button over to configure approvals, it's going to add a new column to your list for the status of the approval because it's going to track it. And if you want to enable who the default approver is, you slide that button over. Then you could choose from this drop down any of the fields that are capturing people's email addresses, names coming from your global address list. So maybe I want it to be based on Who created this entry? Person responsible. I have it set up so that it's automatically going to that manager's name. So just so you know, you could do that, and then you click apply. It's automatically going to be added to this list. So if I scroll over, you could see it now has this new column called approval status, and there's nothing submitted for any of these. But let me go back to the list we're working on for capturing our expense reimbursement. You can see that it says not submitted in this approval. And when I go to automate, it says configure approvals. Mine is turned on, and I have it automatically going to managers name/email. So just so you know, that's what I have it set up to do. So what's going to happen then is if I want to send this for approval, I can click where it says not submitted. You could see the name of the person. You could see that it's automatically, if I wanted to put any details in to send this for approval, please let me know if this is, blah, blah, blah. Do whatever we want to type in there for them to get. Then click submit. It's going to change the status. It's going to say, I can't remember if it says pending or waiting response. I forget what the notification is, but it's creating that to be sent for approval. Now, where exactly is it going? Well, it's actually going to, by default, Microsoft Teams. So let me open up my Microsoft Teams again. In a second, I'm going to have a chat coming in. Activity will be coming in. Sorry, it seems to be just a little bit slow right now. Let me just go to my activities and I can show you. This is what it's going to end up looking like. So this is an example that I did yesterday. Both of these were. I was sent both of these yesterday. So I just got a banner notification at the bottom right of my screen. And I just got this came in. So I can now click on the one that I was working on with you, showing you how to do. So here's the one for this person. Here's a link to the attachment where I could actually open the attachment and see exactly what it is. So here's the details of that expense. Okay, so once I have looked over that expense, do I want to approve or reject this? Sorry, I lost my window here. Let me get back to that. I can click in and type in comments to go back to the person if I wanted to, or I can just click approve or reject. I'm just going to click approve. It automatically notifies them back, letting everybody know, and it updates in the approvals app. It updates in SharePoint where the list is being kept. Everything is being kept up to date as to the approval status of this. So back into the list again. You could see it was requested, but in a second it's going to update. I could just refresh my screen. So once it's sent, it's in the requested state, but I'm going to refresh it. It will come back up here in a second and it's going to say approved. Matthew, I'll jump to you quick for a question that someone might have.
Yeah, someone's wondering if they would be able to see a picture of the actual receipt as well.
I don't know if I have it set up. Are they talking about the email?
Yes, yeah, I believe so.
Let me see if I got an email. I can't remember if I had that one set up to do an email. Let me check my emails here real quick.
Well, is it then possible to set it up so that they could see a picture of the receipt as well?
Oh gosh, yes,
email?
They can actually.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. If they want to see a picture of the receipt and they're the person that was the approver, we could set it up to say send it to the, because that would have to be a Power Automate feature though, just so you know. You could have it set up so that through Power Automate, it automatically not only sends a receipt back to that person, but a copy of that receipt could go to the sender as well, or the approver.
Okay,
Anything
great.
can be done in Power Automate. Just keep that in the back of your mind.
Oh,
it's
so
like programming.
Yeah, they're saying so in the form you have an option to attach a PDF. Does
Correct.
that come through in the approval?
No, I do not think it comes through in the approval. I think it's just a notification. I don't think the PDF comes through. But
Okay.
there's I don't know if everybody knows this, but there's actually an app that I open all the time through Teams, and it's the Microsoft Approvals. Approvals is an app that can be opened at any time, and you can see the status of any approval that you've been sent or that you sent to somebody else for approval. So quickly, before we run out of time, I do need to show you Power Automate side of things. So if for some reason you feel like you need to go further, like with the example Matthew was just talking about, or you're going to do a separate Microsoft form and you also want to have a list, and you want the results to go from the form into the list, and you want to be able to get a notification that it, as an example, get a notification that a new item was added. You also, which by the way, we can do right in the list. We don't have to any magic. Go back and watch the Microsoft list training that we did last week. We talked about how to set that up so that you can get an email when a new item is added. You could have a workflow that is set up that says, I want it to be sent for approval. Here's who I want it to be sent to, blah, 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 based on this column. It's not as easy to do things through Power Automate. You do need to have more information. You have to give it more information. So in your handouts, I did give you a copy paste that you could do, and I'm going to grab my own copy paste here to show you. If I'm doing this from, oops, let me get my Power Automate workflow. I can copy and paste, and I have, you guys all have this in your handout as well. But if I come in, I could just describe what I want. So I basically put in here, create an automated cloud flow for a SharePoint list, call it expense reimbursement request. Here's the trigger when a new item is created, follow these steps, blah, blah, blah. I gave it everything that it needs. I could click generate and it can automatically create that workflow. But you have to understand a lot of different things by doing that. You need to understand, where is the list? What is the list called? How do I get to the list? Any other triggers that you may need or other actions. You have to tweak things to make sure that it's doing the right actions you want it to. Which column are you going to get the email address from, blah, blah, blah. It's got a lot more to it than just saying, hey, Copilot, build this for me. You could, so this is what it gave you, and then you have to go into each one of these steps, and you would have to fill this all out. Let me jump back to Power Automate real quick. Instead, let me just do my back arrow. Instead, you could go to templates on the left-hand side, and from the templates, you could go to the category at the top called approval. From there, you could actually search for approvals that are related to working with forms, lists, etc. So if I want to search for one that is based on forms, I could put in forms and it's going to show me every one that is available. So start an approval when a response is submitted in forms. I could choose something like that. And then once again, I have to tell it, what is the form? Where is the records going? I have to fill in the blanks of everything and look at all these different apps that it's actually using, because it uses Teams to get the notification of the approval. So it takes a little bit more work to do it that way. But just so you know, it's possible to do. So I could come in and I could say, use this one, and I wanted to go through this approval. I click create, and I still have more that I need to fill out, but you could manually create these. But the easier choice is back here in our expense reimbursement request. Do things from here, because remember, when we talked about creating lists, under Automate, I could go in and create a rule. And if I want to get a notification when a new item is created, I can actually do that. I can say, who needs to get the email when this comes in to let us know a new record was added? We have a lot of different things that we can do. So do it in the list instead of manually having to create things in Power Automate. But I gave you all instructions in your handout for those. So Matthew, I don't know if you had a question you wanted me to quick answer, or if you want me to close out quick first.
Yeah, I was just standing by to close out the session.
Okay. So just so everybody has a little bit better of an idea here. When we talk about using Power Automate is a very powerful tool. You can use it, work with lists, it can work with forms, all of those. The ones that we use for automation directly in the application does not require us to know Power Automate and coding and all these other backdoor things. So list versus Microsoft list form versus a Microsoft form. Highly recommend trying the list form. Instead of the Microsoft form where you're going to have to probably do a lot more work, try the list form. See if that's going to be an okay choice for you. I gave you all of this in your handouts to read through as well, but it's your choice. It's not something I can answer for you, but having that person column has been a godsend. It is a great choice to be able to have that field, that column that has the name of the person you want to set up an automation for. So that person column in the list is great. Then walk through, do the configuration, and I just want you to try both. Try a regular form, try a list form, but work with the list form going right into a list if that's where you want your results to go. Okay. Matthew, that was a lot of information in a short period of time. I'm going to highly recommend to everybody go through your handout, read through it, then go, kind of plan ahead, then build. Okay. That's going to be my closing.